The year was 2018. 5 years ago, I was babysitting for my close friend, Sarah, and her two young children, 8-year-old Leo and 6-year-old Lily. Usually, babysitting them was a breeze. We'd have dinner, watch a movie, and tuck them in by 9 p.m. Then, I'd have the house to myself until Sarah and her husband, Michael, returned. This particular Friday night, however, was different. After dinner and a movie, I tucked the kids into bed. As I settled back in the living room, Leo reappeared, his eyes wide with fear. He claimed he saw a shadowy figure move past his window. Leo's bedroom faced the fenced-off backyard. This quiet, suburban neighborhood made his claim unsettling. I questioned him, wanting to be sure he wasn't just imagining things. Leo insisted he saw a figure, though he couldn't offer much detail. We peeked out the window, but the backyard was dark and silent. I assured Leo I'd keep an eye on things and send him back to bed. Back in the living room, with the backyard partially visible, I nervously flicked through channels. Then, about 20 minutes later, I saw it. A dark shape moved through the shadows, near the kitchen window. It was a figure. I was very scared. I couldn't believe it. I watched as the figure disappeared around the corner of the house, unsure what to do. Calling Sarah and Michael seemed unnecessary, but I couldn't ignore the situation. Minutes ticked by, each second filled with tension. Then, the doorbell rang. I walked towards the door. Peeping through the peephole, I saw the same figure from the backyard. He claimed his car had broken down and his phone died, asking to use my phone. My mind raced. Something wasn't right. I didn't hesitate. "No," I replied curtly, refusing to acknowledge his story about the car. He stood there, insisting on coming inside, and my anxiety shot through the roof. I could feel panic building up inside me. In a desperate attempt to scare him off, I blurted out, "The police are on their way." Slamming the door shut and securing the lock, I tried to calm my racing heart, but the fear lingered. The night seemed to drag on in a haze. Every little noise made me jump. I couldn't shake off the feeling of dread. Finally, my friends Sarah and Michael showed up, bringing a sense of relief with them. So, after I told them everything that happened, they called 911 right away. Then, I was kind of stuck because the police and other people in charge asked me a bunch of questions before they said it was okay for me to go back home. Elena, another friend, assured me that there were no signs of the stranger returning. Despite this, the image of that unfamiliar person loitering around haunted me. It was a stark reminder that danger might lurk where you least expect it, even in your own neighborhood. Later on, Detective Harris got in touch with me. They caught someone who'd done similar things before. Turns out, he had a habit of wandering and taking little things, but he said he didn't mean any harm. Knowing he probably wasn't dangerous made me feel a bit better, but I still felt uneasy from that night. It taught me to trust my gut feelings and to be super careful, especially when I'm alone or in weird situations. That whole thing made me realize how important it is to stay safe and alert all the time. Before I continue to the next story, if you are interested in earning from YouTube without showing your face or without making videos by yourself using artificial intelligence, like the video that you are watching right now, then I have a special free training for you. Check the first link in the description below to get instant access. I grew up in a peaceful neighborhood, surrounded by woods and friendly faces. It was the kind of place where kids played outside until the street lights flickered on and neighbors knew each other's names. But one night something happened that changed everything. It all began when I was 14. I had just finished a babysitting course and landed my first job watching two young children across the street. Their parents promised to be back by 11 p.m., leaving me in charge of two sweet kids and their elderly dog, Alex. The night started off great. The kids picked their snacks, brushed their teeth like pros, and hopped into bed without any trouble. I felt so relieved. I settled in the living room to watch TV. The room had big windows looking out at the woods, making it super pretty. All of a sudden, I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. It made my heart jump. I thought it might be a wild animal. But when I really looked, I knew it wasn't just a deer. My brain started making up all sorts of ideas, and I started feeling kinda nervous. I called my parents to feel better. Hearing their voices helped me calm down, and I promised to tell them if anything else strange happened. After I hung up, I sat on the floor, petting Alex, but I still felt kinda worried about whatever was moving in the woods. I looked outside and saw a dim light moving closer to our house between the trees. It was getting closer and closer, making me really scared. When it got bigger, I saw that it wasn't someone from around here. They were shining a flashlight into our living room. The light went all over the room and then pointed right at me. I was so scared that I couldn't even move. Then, it moved down and showed a face under the window. It was really scary because I couldn't see much in the bright light. I was crying and trying to yell or move, but I was too scared to do anything. The light moved around, almost like it was teasing me, and then everything went dark. Suddenly, I heard a loud noise from the garage. I was so scared that my heart was pounding. I grabbed a hammer from the kitchen, trying to be brave. Then, someone started banging on the front door. I was freaking out. I called the parents of the kids I was babysitting, hoping they'd answer. Luckily, they did. I told them everything and begged them to check the cameras outside. Their dad talked to the person at the door and said it was just a neighbor asking for some spices. But it didn't make sense. Why would he be spying on us, banging on the door, and then asking for spices? I felt unsure and worried, but I listened to their mom and opened the door even though I wasn't sure about it. I was kind of nervous, but I went ahead and opened it anyway. A man stood there, introducing himself as the neighbor. He quickly went to the garage door, checking if it was locked. He then asked to borrow my phone, still connected to the parents. I was very confused and I handed it over. He spoke to the parents, and I caught some words: police, safe. With the kids crying in the bedroom and a stranger holding my phone, I felt like I was in a nightmare. The man revealed a gun, assuring me everything was fine. The police were on their way. The next day, something scary happened. At about 8:45 p.m., our neighbor saw a light in our backyard. He saw it move closer to our house and shine through the windows. There was a man with the light, but our neighbor couldn't see his face clearly. Then, the man went into our garage, making the same noise I heard before. Can you believe it? That man was in the garage with me the whole time, watching from the dark. Our neighbor was really worried and kept knocking hard on our door. Then the police came and caught the person who broke in. Turns out, he was on drugs and wasn't thinking clearly. Thinking back, I realize I was really lucky. My life could have been in danger that night. I learned that life is precious and you never know what might happen. Now, even though I still live in the same neighborhood, things feel different. The woods and nighttime noises remind me of that scary time. But I also understand how important life is, and I'm grateful for the bravery of strangers who become heroes. Three years ago, when I was just 16, I was babysitting for a family I knew well. It was usually a chill gig. The kids were always asleep by the time I arrived and snored like little angels through the night. But this time, there was a little addition, a 6-month-old baby. Their house was like something out of a movie. Not fancy from the outside, but inside it was a wonderland. A massive CD collection for music lovers like me, a kitchen stocked with everything you could ever want, and artwork that made you feel like you were walking through a museum. There was even this cool fake samurai sword lying around with the kids' toys. It looked so real, I had to pick it up and swing it around like a warrior. I wasn't surprised to find it there, though this family loved unique and interesting things. The house was like a maze, but a cool one. You walked straight into the living room from the front door, and a big staircase led you upstairs to the bedrooms. The living room was huge, with windows overlooking the front yard. And then, the house just opened up into a giant kitchen and dining area, like one big happy space. Their parents left the house around 8:30 p.m. and told me their oldest daughter could help if I needed anything with the sleeping kids. I didn't know much about taking care of babies, but they seemed sure she could help. They said they'd be back by 1 a.m. and told me to call if I had any problems. I found a cozy spot to read my book. I was so into the story that I lost track of time. I didn't have my phone, and there wasn't a clock around, so I didn't know how long I'd been reading. All of a sudden, the wind outside got really loud and scary. It made me feel nervous. I realized I'd been reading for a while, so I decided to go check on the kids and then watch TV. When I walked through the dark room, something made me stop. The light from the kitchen was behind me, and in the front yard, I saw someone standing there. I got really scared. I was alone with the kids, and this stranger was trying to get into the house. I couldn't call for help, the door wouldn't lock, and I was too scared to run because the kids were asleep upstairs. There was this really big guy, and I felt super small and scared. He was standing there in the dark, and his eyes looked so cold and scary, like they didn't have any feelings. It was the scariest thing I'd ever seen. I knew I had to do something. I looked around the room and saw a fake samurai sword. My hands were shaking when I grabbed it and held it up high, hoping the guy would see it and go away. We stared at each other for what felt like a really long time. Finally, he turned around and walked back to where he came from, disappearing into the night. I was still shaking from all the fear. Then, I hurried to the front door and locked it as hard as I could. I was 16 and really scared. But looking back, I made a mistake that night. I didn't call anyone. I was worried they'd be mad at me for putting the kids in danger or that the guy might find out and come back. Thankfully, everything turned out okay. The family was safe and nothing bad happened to them again. But I'll never forget that night, especially the scary moment that made me leave my hiding spot. If I hadn't done that, who knows what could have happened. It was a super scary night, but it taught me something really important: always pay attention to what's around you and trust your gut feeling. Even if it's just a fake sword, sometimes showing a little bravery can make the scary things go away.